Yeah, well, I was born in 1921, July 24, 1921, in Greer County, Oklahoma, near Mangum, Mangum. We lived about, I think it's 12, 13 miles out of town to the southwest of Mangum, near a little village of Russell. And that was 2.5 miles south of us. It was on a farm. Uh, that was dry land farming. And it was in 1938, I think we had probably 3 days of 120 degrees with wind blowing. So we made 3 bales of cotton that year. A bale of cotton was worth about $50 and not enough feed to feed the livestock. My dad had to go to the bank and borrow money to buy feed for the livestock. So I graduated from high school in 1939, and with my suitcase and my thumb, I was out of there. I hitchhiked to St. Joseph, Missouri, and it took me 2 days to get up there. In those days, a traveling salesman would pick you up, and they'd put the pedal to the metal and to get to their next destination. So it only took us 2 days. Took me 2 days to get up there.
I'm curious, why were you so set on leaving so quickly?
Well, there was no future whatever for me there. You could maybe make enough of a living to live off of. It was, as I say, we had 3 bales of cotton in '38, and that was $150 cash crop for the year. There was no other income. And I think they had WPA or PWA or something like that, the Works Progress Administration, that my dad worked on, where they were building dams in the streams to conserve the water, try to catch pools down the streams there so that wouldn't all run off. And I think he got about $30 a month for that with a team of horses and a Fresno to move the dirt with, and the wagon and all that. So when I graduated from high school, I was out of there. I had a sister living in St. Joseph, Missouri. She was a half-sister. And I hitchhiked up there, and I got as far as Atchison, Kansas the second day, and so it was nighttime, and there was a train running over to St. Joseph, and I think it's about 25 miles, so I probably paid a quarter or something other to ride that, and then walked, I don't know how far across to, well, it was 2800 block that she lived on, so it was quite a little ways out there to where she lived. And they had an old, it had been I guess a ranch or something other. It was a large house that they lived on there, 2-story. And so I guess their rent was to upkeep the place because there wasn't much money flowing around at that time. So that's, I lived with them. She worked at my sister worked at the Smith Brothers clothing factory, making Big Smith overalls and coveralls. Don't know if you live in the Southwest, you probably ran across some of those. And so that's all. I never wore anything but Big Smith overalls because she worked there. And next door there was a woman's hat factory, and she knew the foreman over there. So with some networking, I got a job working on the women's hats, felt hats, and they would. It was kind of on a lathe that would had like a emery wheel that would pick up the felt and set it in one direction. Then it had I think it was some sort of a mohair wheel or something like that. That lay it down. We'd had a pad that would linseed oil or something of it, and slick that down. They put it on the forms and form it in, and then they'd decorate the hats. So when they stopped making winter hats and started making straw hats, I was phased out of a job. And that's when I joined the Navy.
What year was that?
1939, December the 5th.
Why Navy instead of Air Force? Your
Well,
brother wasn't really Air Force.
I wanted to I wanted to go to this radio station, radio school that they had in Kansas City. But that was $300 to attend that, plus you had to live. And I never was able to accumulate that much money. So I joined the Navy. They assured me I could probably get into radio, which I did. I'd made fairly good scores on their entrance test and everything. So, we just had in a high school, we only had, I think, we had general science and maybe 2 years of math. But I guess I did a good enough score that I was able to get in and go to they had a new school just starting, an aviation radio school in San Diego. And I was in the second class of that. And so that was pretty good duty down there. Nice beach.
So you were enthused about this schooling and the
Yes.
job.
I wanted to get into that newfangled radio stuff. And so anyway, I went through that. It was a 4-month school, I think. And then I'd gone to Great Lakes Naval Training Station before that, and then I got duty there. And so people, when they'd ask me where I was from, I said, Oklahoma. I said, so, you're an Okie. No, I didn't go to California with a mattress on top of my car. I went by Pullman train, courtesy of the Navy. So, anyway, I went to the radio school there and then was assigned to VP 43 in Seattle, Washington, Patrol Squadron 43. And they had the old flying boats that you could walk on top of the hull underneath the wing. That's kind of a parasol wing. And they came through with in the fall of 40 with a draft for Coca Solo at the Patrol Wing 3, Coca Solo in Panama Canal Zone, and one for Patrol Wing 2 in Pearl Harbor. And I was placed on the Patrol Wing 2 draft. So when I got out there, I was assigned to Patrol Squadron 22, VP 22.
What'd you think about
V was
going?
air and P was patrol. So that's
Oh, okay.
if it was VS, it'd be a scouting squadron, and VT would be a torpedo squadron.
Oh,
So were you a radio signal man or
Yeah,
what?
just code and Morse code, and we also had a transceiver in the plane that the pilots used, which was also voice and we could use a code or voice on it, and Morse code. Which later on they phased that out, and I had to change my rate to something else. So I selected
out of a job again.
Yeah, I could either go to called it one school, training devices, or aviation electronics school. So which I selected that. So I went another 40 weeks. Well, actually, it took me 44 weeks because I failed 2 phases.
uh-oh.
So anyway, it was supposedly about the third year level of MIT electronics course, but didn't have all the other things, just the electronics. So anyway, I got through that, and that was up in I don't know what year that would have been. So the draft went to Pearl Harbor in October, I think it was, of 1940. and was assigned to Patrol Squadron 22. And we went to Midway, and they sent us out to Midway in October, I think it was, of 1941. You know. And when we were out there, Admiral Crusoe, was that his way? Or not pronounce it Crusoe or Crusoe? He was a special ambassador that was being on his way to Washington, D.C., aboard a Pan American Clipper. Those were beautiful things when they took off there in that channel from alongside of Pearl Harbor. They were right by our hangar. They'd get that thing up on the step, and then finally they'd drop the nose and bring it up and break the suction there, and they were off and going.